It is the 28th day of the month of Iyar, Kaf Ches B'Iyar, which means that it is Yom Yerushalayim, Erev Shabbos, Yom Yerushalayim, and we are up to Daf Yud Amud Aleph of Maseches Yoma. All caught up, Baruch Hashem. The Gemara was discussing the response of Rabbi Yochanan to Reish Lakish, that the reason that the Shekhinah did not dwell in the second base of Mikdash was not simply because Jews didn't come back from Bavel in the times of Ezra and Nehemiah, but because it was built by the Parsim, and though the Torah says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence will rest in the base of Mikdash, it's Yafta Lekim LeYafes. HaKadosh Baruch Hu does nice things for Yafet. That the Yafet did beautiful things, but the Shekhinah of Hashem is Yishkan Ba'alei Shem. And now the Gemara wants to know, how do you know that the Persians, who allowed the Jewish people in the days of Cyrus the Great, that they allowed the Jewish people to come and build the second base Hamikdash, that they came from Yefes? That's the Gemara's question. Top of Yud Amud Aleph, one line down from the second line. Says the Gemara, how do you know that the Persians came from Yefes? Says the Pasuk, the Pasuk says, B'nei Yefes. Who are the B'nai Yefes? Gomer u'magog u'madan v'yavan v'tuval u'meshach v'tiras. These are the sons of Yefes. This is in the 10th parak of Bereshis, Parshas Noach, going through all of the sons of Yefes. So now the Gemara is going to explain who these people are. Gomer ze Germamia. Gomer is Germamia. Magog ze Candia. That's Candia, which is not Canada. Madai ze Macedonia. Madai is the Macedonians. Yavan ke mashma. Yavan is Yavan. Right, that's Greece. Good. Tuval ze base Unaiki. Tuval is base Unaiki. Meshech zu Musia. Meshech is Musia. And Tiras, the final son listed as the Bnei Yefes, Pligi ba Rabbi Simai v'Rabbanan. This is machlokes between Rabbi Simai and the Rabbanan. V'Amrilan, some say Rabbi Simon v'Rabbanan. Not Rabbi Simai, but Rabbi Simon. And the Rabbanan, Chad Amar zu beis Taraiki, v'Chad Amar zu Paras. One says it's beis Turkey maybe. V'Chad Amar zu Paras, and the other one says this is Persia, and that is what we are talking about here. Tani Rav Yosef says, Rav Yosef, Tiras zu Paras. Tiras, the son of Yefes, is Paras, is Persia. And then the pasuk continues. Savta v'rama v'sabtacha. What about these individuals? Satan Rav Yosef. This means Sakistan Gavaisa v'Sakistan Beraisa. The inner Sakistan and the outer Sakistan. Bain Chada lechada, and from one to the other is Mea Parsi, is 100 parsas. That's the distance between them. Ve'ekefa Alpha Parsi, and the surrounding area is 1,000 parsa. Rashi points out here that they are surrounded by mountains, and that's what that means. Okay. Vatihi Reishis Mamlachtai Bavel. This is talking about the Milchama. This is I think talking about Nimrod. Yeah. But they Reishis Mamlachtai Bavel ve'erch ve'achad ve'kalne. The beginning of his Malchus was in these places, so now we're going to explain what they mean. Bavel, Kamash Ma'asa. Bavel is Babylonia, as we know. Erech, Ze, Orichos. Erech is Urikash. Achad Ze, Baskar. Achad is Baskar. And Kalne, Ze, Nofer, Ninfi. This is a place called Nofer Ninfi. So we're attributing the names of the Chumash to the names that were known to the Amoraim. Min ha'aretz hahi yatsa Ashur. From this land came Ashur. Tan Rav Yosef, Ashur ze Silek. Ashur is Silek. That's the Assyrians. That's called Silek. V'yiven es Ninveh. And he built Ninveh v'es Rechavis Ir v'es Kalach. And he built these places: Ninveh, Rechavis Ir, and Kalach. Ninveh k'mashma. Ninveh, we know what that is. That is as it says. Rechavis Ir zu Pras de Meishan. Rechavis Ir is the Paras of Meishan, a place called Paras of Meishan, and Kalach zu Paras de Bursik. De Bursif, the Kalach is a place called the Paras of Bursif. Vesresen, Beis Ninveh, Uveis Kalach, he Ha'ir Hagdola. And Resen is between Nineveh and Kalach, and that's a great city. Resen ze Aktesphon, he ha'ir hagdola, and Resen is Aktesphon or Aktisphon, which is a big city. And then says the Gemara, any day Nineveh ha'ir hagdola, but I don't know whether Nineveh is referred to as the ir hagdola. It is ambiguous in the pasuk. Im Resen ir hagdola, or if Resen is this big city, which one is it? Which is the ir hagdola mentioned in the pasuk? But when the pasuk says in Yoma that Nineveh was the ir gdola le'elokim ma'alach shalosh yomim, journey of 3 days, have omer Nineveh hi ha'ir gdola. It comes out that Nineveh is the ir gdola that's mentioned already in Bereshis. V'sham, and there now, skipping from Bereshis to the middle of Bamidbar to Parashat Shlach. Now we're talking about other names of people and places. Achiman, Sheshai, and Talmai, the descendants of the giants. Who are the Yelidei Hanak? Who are the descendants of the children of Anak? Tana says as follows: Achiman, who is Achiman, is Miyuman Shebachim, is the most skilled of his brothers. Sheshai, who is Sheshai, Shemesim Esa Aretz Shchitus. He made the ground like pits or like destruction. He was so huge that he would crush things in his leave things in his wake. Talmai, who is Talmai, he made the ground so full of ridges, meaning because he would step and make ridges and divots. That he was so huge. Davar acher, if I'm not mistaken, Rashi here leaves out the davar acher. That the Nusach Rashi is to leave it up, but we have it without parentheses here. Davar acher, Achiman bana anas. Achiman built anas. Shesha bana alush. Shesha built a place called Alush, and Talma bana Talbush, and Talma built a place called Talbush. Yelidei Anak. Why are they called Yelidei Anak? Shema'anikim achamim b'mkoman, because the sun looks like a necklace around them because of how huge they are. When you look up, you see the sun like around where their neck is. That's the distance between a normal person and the height of these giants. Amar Rabbi Yeshua says Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, Amar Rebbe, in the name of Rebbe, Asida Romi Shetipol Biyad Pras. Now this is a debate that rages between the Chacham. You see this here, and you see this in Yoma, and you see it in the beginning of the Zara, and you see this in a few other places in Chazal. The relationship between Romi and Pras. These two nations at the end of time, which the Maharal points out in Netzach Yisrael, other Romi and Paras, these two nations that we have not yet dealt with, and Yishmael is separate, or alternatively, says the Maharal, Romi becomes the descendants of Christianity, and Paras becomes the descendants of Yishmael, which is fascinating current events for anybody looking at the news in Tafshin Pei Vav, where we are holding at the moment. I see the Roman Shetipol Biyad Pras, that one day Rome, that's the Western world, is going to fall in the hands of the Persians. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, "Lachin shimu atzas Hashem asher yatz al Edom." Listen to that which Hashem says about Edom. Umachshavasav asher chashav al Yoshvi Teman, and the thoughts that he says about those that inhabit Teman. Im loy yischavum tzirei hatzon. If they will not be dragged away by the young bucks, by the young sheep, if they won't indeed destroy them, and that's the pasuk in the 49th parak of Yirmiyahu. So this is the opinion of Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi in the name of Rebbe, that Rome is going to fall to the hands of the Persians, which are called the Tzirei Atzon. Maskif la Rabbi Bar Ula, says Rabbi Bar Ula, I disagree with you. My mashma the high Tzirei Atzon Parasi. Who says that the Tzirei Atzon are referred to as the Persians? The pasuk says, Ha'el asher ro'isa bal hakarnaim, the ram that you saw with these two horns. Malchei Madai Pras, these are the kings of Madai and Pras, the pasuk in Daniel. Ve'ema Yavan, but you could also say that it's Greece. Dichsev at Sapir Haseir Melech Yavan, that the young buck, the Tzirei Atzon, is not simply a reference to the Medes and the Persians, but it might be a reference to the Greeks. Which means that it might not be that Rome falls to the Persians, it might be that Rome falls to the Greeks. Kisalik Rav Chaviv Bar Surmaki, when Rav Chaviv Bar Surmaki went up, meaning he went up to Eretz Yisrael. Amra coming to Rabbanan, he said this Torah in front of the Rabbanan. Amarle, so he said to them, "Man de layade perushi cry." One who doesn't understand what the psukim mean. Mosif tiyuf de Rebbe is going to come and ask a question against Rebbe. I don't understand. My tirei atzon. What does tirei atzon mean? The young of the flock. Zutra de achohi. It means the youngest of the flock, meaning not referring to nations as bucks or bulls of the flocks, but the youngest of the flock. Which flock? The flock that we mentioned at the top of the Amud, which is the Tanur of Yosef, Tiras ze Paras. Tiras is Paras. That was the youngest of the sons of Yefes. And that's the Tirei Hatzon. That's the one that is going to destroy Rome. Amar Rabbi Baruchana says, Rabbi Baruchana, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Mishum Rabbi Yehuda. Says Rabbi Yochanan in the name of Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yehuda, the son of Rabbi Eloi. I see the Rome Shititpo be at Pras. No, the other way around. That one day Rome is going to fall in the hands of this is the same word, that Rome is going to fall in the hands of Pras. Kal v'chomer. It's a kal v'chomer. What's the kal v'chomer? You don't need a pasuk to teach you this. You can learn this as a kal v'chomer. Ma migdash rishon shebanu b'nei Shem. If the first Beis Hamikdash was built by b'nei Shem, the Semites. Nobody ever refers to anybody as Semites, only anti-Semites. But it was built by b'nei Shem. V'hechrivu kasdim, and the kasdim destroyed it. V'naflu kasdim bi'ar parsim. The kasdim, that's the Babylonians, fell in the hands of the Persians. Migdash sheni shebanu parsim. The second Beis Hamikdash, which was built by the Persians, v'chrivu Romim, and was destroyed by the Romans. Einadin sheiblu Romim bi'ar parsim. Does it not make sense that the Romans would fall at the hands of the Persians? Meaning that the destroyers should fall at the hands of the builders. Amar Rav says, Rav, no. I see the parashitibul bi'ad Romi. This is the counter argument. Says Rav that the Persians will fall in the hands of the Romans. So Amru lei Rav Kana Rav Ashi Rav. So Rav Kana Rav Ashi said to Rav, Banoi biyad Satari. I don't understand. The builders are going to fall at the hands of the destroyers. That doesn't make any sense. Amarlahu, he said, yes, absolutely. Gzeiras Melechi. This is what the Rebbeinu Shalom has decreed. Ikeda Amri, and there are those that say, Amar inu nami ha ka sasri beiknishta. What is, it's not just the Gzeira of the Melech, but what's the argument to support this? Inunami, they are also destroyers of shuls. They also destroy shuls, meaning that the Persians are the destroyers of shuls. We have a brisa that supports this. I see the parasha Tipul B'Yad Romi, that the Persians will fall at the hands of Rome. So one reason for that is because they destroy the shuls. And also because this is the Gzer of the king, that the builders should fall at the hands of the destroyers. The Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav says, Rav Yehuda in the name of Rav, Ein ben David ba ad shetivshat malchus Rami harisha b'chol ha'olam kula. Mashiach does not come until the wicked kingdom of Rome has spread all the way across the world. Tishu Chadash for 9 months. Shnei Mar, as the pasuk says, Lachen yitneim ad eis yoleda yalda. Pasuk says that it will be until the time that a child. That's the pasuk in Micha, that there will be 9 months of Roman conquest of the entirety of. Omar, then the Brisa 7 lines from the bottom of Yud Amud Aleph. We'll finish up just a little bit more. Tanu Rabbanan, the Brisa says, Kal lishkas shahayu b'mikdash. With regards to all of the lishkas that were in the Beis Hamikdash, which we're only so far discussing the lishkas parhedron of the Kohen Gadol, but back to the sugya of the Kohen Gadol, all the lishkas that were in the Beis Hamikdash, lo hayu lahem mezuzah. None of them needed a mezuzah. None of them had a mezuzah. Chutz mi lishkas parhedron, except for the lishkas parhedron. Shahayu ba basic dira the Kohen Gadol, because the Kohen Gadol lived there. It was a parsonage that the Kohen Gadol had to live in for a week. 7 days every year. That's where he lived. So it needed a mezuzah. Amar Rav Yehuda, says Rabbi Yehuda, there were many lishkas in the Beis Hamikdash that people used to live in, and they didn't have a mezuzah. But with regards to the lishkas parhedron, there was a specific gzeira that it needed a mezuzah. My time in the Rabbi Yehuda, what is the reason for Rabbi Yehuda? It says specific gzeira only for the lishkas parhedron. So I'm a Rabba, not Rava, but I'm a Rabba. Kasava Rabbi Huda holds kol bayis she'enoi osui limois hacham limois hagshomim enoi bayis. Any house that is not used both in the summer and the winter is not a house, meaning it needs to be an all-year-round house. It cannot just be a temporary house that you only use at a specific time of the year. It needs to be a house that is usable throughout the year. Abai says, I don't understand. Vaksiv, didn't the pasuk write? Pasuk in Amos. The Kesi beis hacharv al beis hakayitz, that I will destroy the winter house and the summer house, meaning what does that mean? It means Amarle, so he says, but they're not called house. Meaning the fact that it's called a bayis hacharif means that it is a subset of bayis. And bayis needs a mezuzah, a bayis hacharif doesn't. And a bayis kaitz is a subset of bayis. But it's not a bayis. Only a bayis that's a bayis all year round needs to have a mezuzah. Abaya disagrees. He says, I don't understand. Sukkah echag bechag. What about a sukkah of sukkahs on sukkahs? So sukkahs hechag bechag, the sukkah that a person uses on sukkahs. Rabbi Huda mechayev. Rabbi Huda is mechayev that he says that it needs a mezuzah, because Rabbi Huda, as we know from Maseches Sukkah, holds that a sukkah needs to be a diras keva, needs to be a permanent dwelling. But for Chachamim Padrim, and the Chachamim exempted from a mezuzah. Vatani Allah, Rabbi Huda mechayev be'eruv, and we said about this. Rabbi Huda requires it to have an eruv, meaning if a sukkah opens up into a shared area, into a chatzar, so the dwellers of the sukkah also need to contribute to the eruv. They need to be included in the eruv chatzeres. Umezuzah, and with regards to mezuzah, it needs a mezuzah uva meiser. And if you brought food into the sukkah, that food would be chayiv in meiser. You're only chayiv in meiser once it comes indoors. When it's still out in the field, you're not yet chayiv in meiser. You're only chayiv in meiser when it comes indoors. When you bring it into the sukkah, according to Rabbi Yehuda, it requires meiser. Says the Gemara, and if you want to say that these are not dinim deraisa, they're all chumras midrabanan according to Rabbi Yehuda, but really it doesn't need a mezuzah, it only needs a mezuzah midrabanan, and the chumras midrabanan, like we wanted to say. Bishlam erev mezuzah, that makes good sense for erev mezuzah. The two first items on the list. You could say that that's midrabanan. Ela meiser, but with regards to meiser, midrabanan. Since when would we say that meiser would be when you bring it into the sukkah, you're chayv in meiser midrabanan? That doesn't make any sense. Dilma asli efrushe. Maybe you're going to end up at the top of your Amud base. Dilma asli efrushe min hachiyuv ala potter, because that is a chumra asli de kula. It's a chumra that's going to end up being a kula. Why? Because you are going to say, this is chayv in meiser, so I'm going to meiser other things onto it. I'm going to use this as but it's not chayv in meiser midaraisa. You're going to use a section of this meiser to pater your other meiser, but it's not chayv in meiser midaraisa. I mean, a pater al chiyuv, and you're going to use the things that are pater on the chiyuv and pater. So it turns out that this is going to be a kula that a chumra that turns into a kula. And we will see the response of Abaya to this on Shabbos Kodesh tomorrow. Daf Yud Amud Beis. And looking forward, please God, to continuing on Shabbos and Matzah Shabbos for those that are not available. It's a short Amud. Yud Amud Beis is a short Amud. So everybody should be able to catch up and follow along. And looking forward to seeing everybody Matzah Shabbos and Shabbos Kodesh. Have a beautiful Shabbos and a Yom Yerushalayim Sameach. We should be zochet to see the Geula Shleim Amitis, Binyan Yerushalayim, B'Shleimusah, B'Mher B'Yamin.